Good morning, everyone. I'm Charlie Moses with the Ohio Telecom Association. Welcome to the Great Lakes Technology Showcase. On behalf of the OTA and the Indiana Broadband and Technology Association and the Telecommunications Association of Michigan, again, thanks to all of you for being here. In this crazy world, we really appreciate everyone making arrangements to try to get together. This is the best we can do at this time. The weather's lousy here in Columbus, so we'll just sit back and try to get through this together. First and foremost, I hope everyone in your family is well and that you're all getting through this together. The next 3 days, we're going to have sessions, 3 each day, concurrent sessions on Mondays and Wednesday, and an expo and networking opportunity so we can make this as real and interactive as possible. I think you'll find some of the technology that we're about to enjoy here will allow us to simulate as much as we can with a regular event that hopefully we get back to next year. Also, you can see the agenda, the bios, and of course, all of our sponsors. We couldn't do this without the sponsors. So thank you again to all of them. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kristy Szabo from VantagePoint for our first session. Thanks so much. Kristy?
All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody can see me. With that, I am going to shift over and hopefully you'll be able to see my presentation slide. So greetings from Mitchell, South Dakota, and agree, Columbus may not be having great weather and South Dakota is not either. Those up north of us are actually getting the white stuff. So I'm kind of thankful that we're not getting white stuff here in Mitchell. I'm here to talk to you this morning. I got a half-an-hour slot. So we're going to talk about finding the funding, preparing for loan and grant funding programs. So to kick it off, I do have my information and these slides will be getting made available to you. So if you have questions, I know I've got a short window, but if questions pop up and if we don't get it to you at the end, you've got my contact information. Please reach out, give me a call, shoot me an email. Would love to talk to you and give you any follow-up question answers that you have. So for funding options and opportunities, I want to talk about what type of programs are out there at a very high level, and then going to wrap up at the end on what you can do to get best prepared to be able to apply for those opportunities once they do come up. State grants, I'm going to go into a little more detail on that. A couple slides I'm going to show you shows kind of how the landscape has changed just over the past couple of years as far as states really seeing the importance of allocating funding from their budgets to get broadband out to their areas. Going to also talk to you about federal loans and grants, primarily the USDA, our US programs. Community Connect has been around for a long time. The Reconnect has been the big one that's been up a couple years now. Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. I'm not going to talk a lot about this one because if you're familiar of this, you know that if you've not already submitted a short form, it's too late for this phase 1 of funding, which is the large bucket of money. That auction is going to kick off here at the end of the month, October 29th. Short forms would have been submitted already. We've got our listing of qualified applicants. We are in under FCC anti-collusion rules. But something to keep an eye out is for phase 2 of the RDOF. We do anticipate that this will be coming out sometime late 2021, possibly 2022. This program it's a good program. It's not the upfront grant dollars or loan dollars to help build out the network, but it's more of those ongoing support funding mechanisms that you would get over a 10-year span. Phase 2, it's going to capture areas where the price cap carriers may not have gotten broadband at a 10-1 or greater, but it's partially. They may have served a portion of a census block, but not the entire group. Those are the areas that are going to be eligible for the RDOF Phase 2. And then from a financing perspective, you know, if grant dollars don't play out for your areas and you don't have the RDOF or the RDOF 2, you know, what are your other options to building out broadband? Well, obviously, it's the loan funding programs. And there are some great lenders out there, whether it be CFC, CoBank, RUS, or even your local financial institutions. Obviously, with the bank that's going to be financing, primarily if you're looking at fiber to deploy broadband, there's going to be a lot that's going to be going into there because they're going to maybe not necessarily understand the fiber asset if you're going to a local bank. Obviously, CFC, CoBank, and RUS are very knowledgeable, but it is a pretty labor-intensive project to go through and get an application put together. So shifting into the states, what I like about these next two slides is it really gives you a good visual of how states have really put the emphasis on broadband. We've really seen it primarily here this year when we've had our students going home, working from home for their school, but also parents are home working from their job, teleremoting. We got telehealth. A lot of people are demanding on that broadband pipe going into the homes, and it's been a struggle. So the view that I have here is where the landscape was back in early 2017 on the different states that had allocated funding for broadband. Very, very small, a lot of gray areas, meaning nothing in place or even being talked about. Let's shift to where we are today. Major change in the landscape as far as states that are seeing a huge need. You can see the number of gray states where there's no known activity. There hasn't even been really discussions that they've been sharing is very, very small. And when we look at the Great Lakes area, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, I hope you guys are going to get there. It sounds like we're close. But we've also seen a lot of states that have been getting the CARE money from the COVID Act primarily. With those programs, we saw a big influx of states getting dollars, in that July, early August timeframe, but a very, very, very short window to get an application in. We've seen states, or it was like maybe even not even quite a 2-week time frame to pull an application together. And obviously with it being COVID, pandemic, CARES related, a real big push to get the project even completed by the end of the year. When we look at states, primarily, we are seeing a lot of states that have very similar characteristics as far as what the requirements are for the program. Each state is looking for a matching contribution. What percentage of contribution varies by state. So we've seen it anywhere from 20% match is required to a 50% match contribution. And with the grant funds being a competitive program, the states are allocating a higher point basis if you are able to commit to matching more of the project versus what the amount you're going to request from the state. And the grant request varies. We've seen some states where, Indiana, you guys had a $100 million bucket. Your neighboring state, Illinois, has $400 million that they have to work with. New York, $500 million. South Dakota, where I'm at, is a very small budget. It's been $5 million is the total budget. So the amount of grant requests for projects, obviously varies depending on the size of bucket of money that your state has allocated for broadband. Primarily, we're looking at targeting those unserved or underserved areas. And we've seen that definition vary. We would like to get to where everyone is on that same basis as far as unserved being 25.3. But we do still have USDA, RUS still looking at that 10.1. We've got some states that actually do still look at that 10.1 as well. The one thing with this is it's got to be a terrestrial-based service. So we're looking at the fixed broadband, whether that's a connected LAN fiber broadband or it's a fixed wireless broadband. Those are classified as those terrestrial technologies that deem an area as being served or unserved when we're looking at qualifying it from a grant perspective. One thing that we're talking about is the application window. Once the state releases the NOFA, which is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, it is a very short window. A lot goes into an application when we're building the narrative. The one thing that I say a lot is, what's your story? What's your community story that you're wanting to get broadband funding for? So it's not a matter of just pulling numbers out of the air. Here's what my build is going to cost. Here's how much I need. I submit my request to the state. It's a very in-depth process where the application is a lot of narrative, a lot of maps, budgets, certifications, what type of design, how are you going to be building the broadband? So it is not something that you can decide today that you want to submit an application and have it ready by Friday. You could do it, but it's probably not going to score very high. So you need to be prepared. Start looking at the areas that you want to hit today. So when those NOFAs come out, you've got, whether it's 45, 60 days to build out, and you're able to get everything pulled together, get a solid application and get it submitted knowing that you're going to score high. There is also a challenge process that's always implemented when we are looking at state funding. The state has the information to the best of their knowledge as far as where coverage is. So they do open it up for a challenge process. Most states that we've worked with has had that, to where an incumbent or an existing service provider that may claim that they're serving an area that you're wanting to get funding for has the opportunity to submit a response and say whether or not that they're serving it, how they're serving it, what type of speeds that they're delivering. We are, for the application, like I said, we do submit maps. We usually identify too, based on the map, what census blocks are getting covered. The states aren't overly particular that you follow a exact boundary of a census block, but it's more show us your map, send in a shapefile map of the area that you're wanting to cover, and then we have to reflect what portion of the census block gets covered. So again, the challenge process is usually, whether it's a 15, 30-day window, but there is an opportunity to dispute an application as long as they've got adequate supporting documentation to stay that. So if we shift to the USDA, this is what the Rural Utility Services. Right now, the Community Connect grant application window is open. RUS announced the FOA back at the end of September. And in typical government fashion, we've got the applications that are due December 23rd, right before a holiday, which is good. I was anticipating that maybe they would come in and say the applications were due on December 26th, so at least we can get them in before the Christmas holiday. But the main thing with the Community Connect grant, it is a smaller budget. We don't know how much money they actually have allocated. RUS is currently still in the process of firming up their budget for 2021. What we are anticipating in the past, it's been around a $30 million budget that you can work with. What they're kind of saying is we anticipate somewhere between 30 and 50. I think it's going to be dependent on how many applications they get and how they can shift their dollars around to make sure that they're funding those applications that are solid and score high. The maximum request that you can apply is for $3 million. The minimum is $100,000. There is a 15% matching contribution. And for those of you familiar with RUS, they do want to ensure at the time of application submission that you are going to have that matching contribution. So they do require you to show that you would have cash based on what you have on your audit from cash on hand, providing a bank statement showing that you've got that 15% cash. And as with other RUS programs, that would have to be set aside in a pledged account, and you would use your matching contribution before you start drawing down the grant funds. The one change that RUS did make with the Community Connect program this round is they're still targeting unserved areas at the definition of 10.1. But prior, if you had a mobile broadband provider that was providing broadband at 10.1, that would disclude your area from being eligible. They counted mobile as being a viable technology. That has now been changed. They do not count mobile, they do not count satellite, but a fixed wireless would. The other main component with the Community Connect grant program is based on the title, Community Connect. You do have to have a community center that resides within the boundaries of the PFSA. So as we're looking at areas, that's one thing that we want to look at is, do we have an area, do we have a facility that we can dedicate to being open to the community to access broadband? The next program is the Reconnect. RUS has had 2 rounds of this. I'm sure you've all heard of this. It's been some very significant dollars that have been awarded. Round 1 was just over $600 million. Round 2, they've got $500 million. Round 3, we have been told by several RUS staff that there will be a round 3. Not exactly sure yet what the budget's going to be, but I am anticipating just from some of the hearings I'm hearing from some different GFRs that it'll be very similar to what we've had the past 2 years, if not a little bit more, because of the whole impact of the COVID pandemic. With this, you can do either 100% grant, which I say that loosely. It's actually 75% grant and a 25% matching contribution. You can do a 50% grant, 50% loan combination, or 100% loan total, which would be all loan at a low 2% fixed interest rate. Again, you'd have a matching contribution of 25% if you're going after just the grant funds. If you're doing a combination of grant loan, then obviously the loan would be capturing your contribution because you'd be paying that back. What we had in the first 2 rounds was targeting unserved areas, meaning, again, not able to get 10-1. And with this, again, with RUS, they've got their mapping tool. So we have the ability to draw different boundaries to classify the areas that we deem as being unserved that we want to include for our funding. With the Community Connect, you can do 1 contiguous area per application. So this is also another change with the Community Connect is you can submit multiple applications, but RUS is only going to fund and award 1. So they're going to take a look at all of them. Which one scores the highest is the one that they would be awarding. With Reconnect, you get 1 application, but you can have multiple PFSAs is what they call it, your proposed funded service areas. So you could have 10 to 15 little bubbles of areas that all would be deemed unserved, but they're restricting you to 1 application. So again, very good projects, programs. It's a matter of when we're looking at these, there's a lot of work that goes into building the applications. So with that, got the funding programs. We know that they're out there. We need to keep an eye out what comes out for your specific area. What can you be doing now? The one thing that, VantagePoint, what we say is don't wait until the program is announced before you start doing your planning. This now is when you need to be doing the work and getting prepared. So when those windows open, we know it's either a 45 or a 60-day window. We know a lot of work goes into application and having them ready. So what you can do now, I got a bullet of items, and so I want to cover each of these here. So the steps to be positioned for success is start identifying those PFSAs. We know the FCC 477 data is not ideal. It's not 100% accurate, but it is a first base step to going to looking at your area. Identify where providers are claiming that they are providing service. That is one area. Some states have done a pretty good job about taking it to the next step as far as looking at the 477 data, but then using their sources that they have as well and trying to best get a sense for what the overall landscape is for served versus unserved in your area. Identifying those with Community Connect and with the state grant programs, they allow for us to provide supporting documentation, whether that's going out and talking to your customers in these areas that you're going to want to target, having them run speed tests, getting an affidavit, doing a support letter, gathering as much information as you can to basically discredit the claim that a provider is delivering 100 meg service when actually it's at its best, 4.1 or 8.2. Getting all of that data, because the more you can gain from your area to basically prove the area is eligible, that they're not getting good service, the better your application is going to be. Because again, they've got their challenge window where providers are going to come and say, look, I filed my 477. I am serving this area. So the more information you can get to basically prove the area as being served, the better. Start those engineering discussions and layouts. Now, from this level, it doesn't need to be the very down to the ground, major detailed level of a network design, but you do need to have enough information as far as what you're wanting to do. Is it going to be fiber? How are you going to deliver it? What's your connectivity point going to be? All of the programs that we've worked with, state and federal, want to see basically a high level enough design to where they can see how you're going to be running the fiber, where you're going to be connecting, how you're going to get to the POP to connect to the outside world. Are you going to be providing just broadband, which most of the programs are? They're required primarily of getting broadband to the areas. But if you're looking at other programs where they're wanting to also have the voice component, like RDOF, how are you going to be delivering that voice service? So start having those discussions. All of the programs do require a CapEx budget. So the other thing you want to do is as you're doing that engineering discussion and the layout, trying to get a good sense of what it is it's going to cost. The one thing when you submit your application, that's your chance to ask for the money that you need. I have not seen a program yet that has an open clause that if you submit your budget and your costs run too high or you didn't budget enough, come back to us, we'll give you more money. That's typically not the case. It's a matter of creating your budget to a best case understanding of what it's going to cost to build, so you know how much you're going to need to ask for support. Determine your services to be offered. So are you just going to do broadband? Are you also going to do a managed Wi-Fi? Are you going to be doing a voice? Are you going to do video? That's a whole nother conversation that I'm not even going to tap on today. But identifying what services that you're going to be offering, how are you going to make a strong case for your project as the reviewers are scoring it? Financial feasibility and analysis. Obviously, there is typically a 5-year forecast at least that we need to include. At the state level, it is a standalone 5-year forecast that they want to see. They're basically looking at the viability of the project, that if they give you the grant funds, are you going to be able to support with your match? And at the end of 5 years, are you making not overly a lot of profit, but are you making some profit so it is a positive return? So statewide, it's a standalone. When you look at RUS, either Community Connect or Reconnect, it is a more encompassing. They want to look at the entire financials of the applicant. So if you're going in as an applicant, we have to provide historical financials, plus we do a 5-year forecast of all of your existing operations, plus adding in the project area that you're going for grant funding. And that gets down to the level of breaking out all of your subscribers, breaking out your subscribers by not only internet, voice, and or video, but by each of those services, how many broadband subscribers are taking your 100 meg, 50 meg, 25, 500 gig, whatever. It's a very projected, detailed forecast that we do from an RUS perspective. And again, including our CapEx budget. So breaking it out based on your fiber. What are your drops going to be? How are your ONTs, your electronics? Community Connect, how are you going to do that community center? What's that going to be funded from a CapEx perspective? All of the programs that we see do add points to the experience of the management team. So it's kind of odd to think that, how do we do that? Yeah, I've been doing telecom broadband for how many years? But it's basically sitting back down at your desk and creating a bio. Think of yourself as going out and soliciting a new job. Hopefully you're not, hopefully things are good, but basically doing a bio, toot your horn. How great have you been? What type of networks have you built? What's your experience? And then what's the experience of your team working together? They're wanting to make sure that by giving these funds out to people, that they're giving it to people who know what they're doing. And it's not someone just coming in off the street saying, hey, I hear broadband is a darn good thing. I want to get started doing it. Don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to get some funding for it. So again, touting your experience, that's the main piece as far as our updated bios. Timelines. Each program has a slightly different requirement from when grant dollars, the grant awards are executed to when they want the project built. So make sure that whatever program you're looking at, that's something that can be viable. State programs are typically 2 to 3 years. USDA allows for 5 years on the Reconnect. The Community Connect is a shorter window. RDOF, you've got a 6-year window to build at the first phase. Phase 2, we haven't seen any of the rules yet on there, but making sure that when you're signing into these programs that you can meet the build out requirements, so there's not a potential for a default or a penalty that may get assessed to you. The last one here is the community benefits. Again, what's your story? So this is really important, especially at the state level and the Community Connect level. It's not uncommon for some of these applications to get very long. A big push is on education. How are you going to benefit the school age kids, whether it's grade school, middle school, high school, college, technical institutions? Professors that are trying to teach remote virtually is an issue. So a big emphasis on education, a big emphasis on telehealth when we're looking at public safety as well. Remote learning from a medical perspective when you've got elderly citizens that have a hard time getting out to the doctor's office. And with COVID, if overall they're doing okay and they just need to get to their regular appointment, do you want them to be going into the clinic, or is there an option where we can really put the story on the broadband connection for the telehealth e-doctoring with their doctors? Essential community facilities, libraries. I mentioned public safety, but just think of all of those things that connect a community together. Economic development. Are you seeing an out-migration of people where if you had a solid broadband connection in this community or this area, people would be wanting to come and live in your area rather than leaving. So really trying to get a sense of what's the story, what are we wanting to tell, how can we really maximize our points to make sure that, yes, we have a huge need. Let's tell it so the reviewing team understands that as well. And then be ready. That's the main thing as we're looking at these, again, when those funding opportunity announcements are made, it is a very short window to get that application together. So, start thinking. It's sitting around the table, having a cup of coffee and talking about the areas. Where do you see your company building out? Where is there a need? How can you fill that need by getting an application? And just start having those conversations and pulling the information together. So with that, I think I got about 5 minutes. I can keep on talking. Do I have any questions from anybody that anybody would want to share or ask? I don't believe I am seeing any questions yet. One thing I'll just kind of to chime in as we're looking at these funding programs, this is what I'm passionate about. So if you didn't get that sense as I'm trying to talk about it, I've been working with our clients to build out broadband in these areas, primarily these rural areas that are really having a need. I've been with VantagePoint since 2006, and I was able to jump in with the USDA program Community Connect right away. And it's amazing to see some of the support letters that we get as part of the applications. One applicant that will always stick out in my mind is they were serving a community that had an elementary school, and he had the elementary students write letters. We got letters from kids on crayons and we submitted them. I mean, what better story can you tell from a kid saying, I don't have the internet, I can't do this? Really tells a story. I mean, obviously crayons we're kind of shifting towards the middle school and high school now, but it's amazing. Do you have a question? Is there any one place where the funds are broken down by state? So we track what we see from a state-by-state basis. It's basically going to the Minnesota border-to-border broadband, next level Indiana grant, where the states are giving it. I have not found one central place that identifies every single state, but good question. So I got just a couple more minutes. I think then we're going to be heading to the next session. If not, again, I want to say thank you for letting me join your conference this morning. It's been great. I will be joining the exhibit hall, the expo hall later this morning with Kevin Klain. So if you have questions, pop over and visit us in the expo hall. I'll be love to talk with you and answer questions then. So with that, thank you.